Hey, this video is going to work through an exercise in drawing a piece of furniture. So we're going to start with something very basic like a table. So we'll leave Steve there for a moment just so we can see that our table is approximately the right size. Now one of the easiest ways to do this is to draw it upside down because the table has a big flat surface. So we're going to start with the tabletop in this case. So we're going to draw a rectangle, R for rectangle. And if you hover over the origin, I don't really want this table to be underneath him, but so I don't want to draw the rectangle under there. But if you hover here and then move across to the right, it will let you start on the red axis there. So I'm going to draw a rectangular tabletop. And the first thing I'll do is make some decisions about how big it's going to be. So that's 1800 long. That's a pretty big table. If we had a coffee table, it might be a meter. So let's go a meter. And our second dimension can be around about, let's try 700. So 1000 millimeters, comma 700. 1000, comma 700. Okay, that looks about like a coffee table. I'm going to pull this up, and the thickness of table material is usually 19 millimeters. Now, I think for this exercise, we'll just round to 20. Okay, the reason it's 19 is because Americans use inches, and 3/4 of an inch is around about 19 millimeters. But we'll just go with 20 because that's a nice round number. So there's our tabletop, and basically when we're drawing furniture or anything like this, the first thing we want to do is make this piece of wood a component or a group. Otherwise, it's going to get messed up with the other lines. So as soon as I've drawn something and it's got 3D, I need a space bar, triple click it, which selects the whole thing. So 1 click selects the surface, 2 clicks selects the surface and the bounding edges, 3 clicks selects everything that's attached, and then I right click and I make it a component or a group. A group is a one-off. A component is where there's many of them. Now there's not going to be many tabletops, there's just one. So I'm going to go with group. The legs, on the other hand, there's 4 of them, and so we're going to make it a component. So let's start by making a leg up in the corner here. So R for rectangle, click on the corner, and the size of this leg is going to be, let's say, 50 mils square. So I just click somewhere and type 50, 50, enter. All right, so now I'm going to P for push-pull, and I'm going to make this coffee table about 500 high. Okay, so immediately I've got a 3D piece of wood, spacebar, triple click it, and make it a component. We'll call this leg. All the rest of the details you can just leave as they are. So click create, and now we've got this as a leg. Now while I'm here, I want to show you one other thing, which is the window outliner. If it doesn't come up on the right here, I usually drag it over to the right. What this is showing us is all of the components and groups that we've got in our model here. So we've got Steve, and you can see you can select it. You can click on the leg, it selects it, and those little dots where it's got 4 dots, that means that it is a component. And this one is a group. You can actually rename these if you want to by right-clicking and going rename. It's at the bottom of the list. So you call that tabletop, just to try and help yourself stay organized. Any of the components, you've already named them. Okay, you did that when we created it. So let's make a second copy of this component. M for move. Now here's something I showed you in the last videos. A way to take a copy is if I want to move this up to the other corner, I click on this corner that I want to line up with the other corner, and as I move it, as soon as I start moving, I press the control key. And as soon as I press the control key, it will take a copy. And so I want to locate that exactly snapping onto that corner. So you don't click until it says end point in group like that, and it's got that little purple dot there. All right, now let's do the back ones. So press the space bar, holding the shift key, I click this, so I've selected both of those, and now I'm going to move this bottom left corner over to here. M for move, click on the bottom left corner, make sure you get the corner exactly on there. Let me just explain this. If I click anywhere, like out here, some random spot, it'll still move it. But the problem is when I go to try and place it, it's in the wrong spot. So I want to place that exact corner, the end point. So I click on that point. That's the point that I want to go to this corner. Okay, and you can zoom in just to double check, and that looks fine. So now have a look up here, and I've got leg, 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 leg. Now, if you really care, you could rename it and give it front left leg, front right, but we don't need to worry about that. All it's really showing us is that we've got all these components and we've got the tabletop. Okay, now table legs usually aren't right out on the corners out here. They're usually in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is spacebar, select this, M for move, and we're going to move it to inwards. In fact, why don't we do both of these together? Spacebar, shift click, we'll move them both in. So M for move. In this case, it doesn't matter where I click, but I usually just in the habit of clicking on a corner. So click, and we'll go, that's around about, let's say 50 mils. Okay, so I move in the left direction on the red axis, and I then type 50, enter. Let's do the same on the other end. Click, so spacebar, click, shift click, M for move, and we'll move across here, click again, and type 50, enter. So that's the left to the right. Now we've also got to do the front ones. So spacebar, click on nothing, click it, shift click the second one, M for move. I'll show you can do this out here. You can click anywhere for this one because it's not actually locking to a point. We're just moving relative from where we started. So if we click here, move on the green axis, which is heading towards the hills, click again to place it and then type 50, enter, and you've done it. Spacebar, click one of these, shift click one of these, M for move, and now we'll click and move back in the green axis and type 50, enter. So far we've got our group, our table with the legs. It's probably not a bad place to save this. File save, call this drawing 3, table, coffee table. You'll save that in your folder. Right, under coffee tables, they usually have a series of rails that go around the edge for support. So we're going to draw those now. Now, it's basically a rectangle which is push-pulled the whole length. So I'm just going to try R for rectangle. I'm going to start on this outside corner here. And as long as it's drawing on the right plane, sometimes when you're facing the wrong direction, see, it doesn't quite want to draw where you want it to go. But if you just move, orbit around a little bit by pressing your mouse wheel, you should be able to get it right. Now, the size of this, based on the way it looks here, I think we're going to make it around about that. So that's about 80 by 20. So if I click somewhere, the 80 is the first measurement. So I'm going to type 80, 20. All right, and now it looks a little bit funny, and that's because the leg is a group and this is not a group, and it just shows that little bit of a conflict there. So first thing I'll do is P for push pull, and I'll push pull that right up to this end here, and I'll hover over that surface and it will take it to exactly that surface. And so first thing I do as soon as I've made it 3D is triple click it with the spacebar, triple click, right click and make a, is it a group or a component? Is there one of these or is there more than one? In this case, there's a front one and a back one that are exactly the same. So I'll make it a component and I'll call it the long rail. And it's going to be up at the top of the table, so I'll put top as well in case we do a bottom rail later. Create. And so now I'm going to, well, okay, before I move it across to the back, I'm just going to move this in by around about 5 millimeters, and it looks nicer. So we just basically click on the corner, head back in that direction, and type 5, enter. Okay, and it looks a bit nicer. So now let's take a copy. I'll spin around to the back because I want to bring this across to the other corner first, and then I'll bring it back in the 5. So I'll click on this bottom corner here, Control key to make a copy. Zoom in here and snap it to that corner. And now I'll click and go backwards to that green direction and type 5, enter. Now, I didn't really show you the purpose of having these as components before, so I wanted to show you that briefly now. Because it's a group, in order to edit this, like if I wanted to push, pull it and make it longer or shorter, I need to double click it. As soon as I do that, it brings up this little environment around it with the axes there or whatever. Then everything else gets grayed out. So in order to push pull this, I have to do it inside the group. But you can see because it's a component, it moves all of the legs at the same time because they're identical components. Okay, so I'm just going to press escape because I don't actually want to change the size of it. But just so you understand, that's why we use a component, because if we've got, like let's say we wanted to shorten this table, we could actually change just the one length there and it would change both sides to be the same length. Or if we wanted to make the table a tall table, you can just do it once instead of having to do it to every leg. Okay, let's finish this other rail across here. It'll be the same dimension, 80 by 20. Now have a look here. In this case, the 20 is first. So you've always got to, once you've done this rectangle, you can't just go 80, 20. You've got to look at which order these go in. So in this case, it's going to be 20, 80. P for push-pull. Click and come across to hover over that edge. Spacebar, triple click it. Make it a component. It's going to be short rail, top. Let's move it in by the 5mm. M for move. Click, click, 5, enter. And now let's take a copy up the other end. M for move. And we'll click it up there. And then we will click and move back in the direction where we're going and type 5, enter. Okay, so we're doing well. We've got our coffee table here. What we're going to do now is make I mean, you've got to imagine this upside down, but we're going to basically have a magazine rack in further up in here. So I'm going to go click, shift click, shift click, shift click. And what I'm going to do is take a copy of these and move them upwards. So if I go M for move, head in the upwards direction like this, and just imagine, it's got to make sure you're not going in a random spot. It's actually got to be on the blue axis. You see it'll snap to the blue axis. And I can just place it somewhere, and that's 305.5, which is a pretty random number. So what I'm going to do now is look at it from the direction that it is and make a decision about where it's going to go. Let's just try, as long as I don't click anywhere else. 300, enter, that's all right. 200, too high. 350, too low. So 300 was about right. So I just like to make it a specific figure. So if you look at it at the start and it's some decimal number, just make it a round number that's nearby. Okay, and as the very last part of this table, what we're going to do is try and fill inside a piece of material that goes inside here. Now this gets a little bit more complicated because it's an unusual shape. So what I'm going to do is use my line tool, click here, move across, move back, and I'm going to basically draw around the outline of this. Okay. Because I closed that outliner window, it doesn't want to snap to anything down, it won't roll. So I'm just going to press escape or click somewhere. Okay, spacebar, undo that. L for line. I've got to keep going with what I did. I've already drawn those two. So I'll go from there across to here, into there, and you've just got to make sure you go along the axes. We're going to work our way around the whole table until we get to the end, just so that we can draw a piece of wood that's going to go in on top of this that fits perfectly inside. Almost there. There's that last corner, and this will be the last edge. I don't think I did this edge. Oh, I might have. Okay, there it is. Now it's filled it in. Oops. Okay, so first thing I want to do is make that a push-pull it, make it 3D. So P for push-pull. Let's go with 20 again, and spacebar, click, 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 and make it a group because it's a one-off. So that is pretty much our coffee table. Steve, thank you very much. You've done your job. See you later. And really, probably what we want to do is spin this up the right way. So we're going to use the spacebar, select everything, make it a group, and now with the M key selected, when you hover over a surface, anytime you've got a group, you can spin it using those dots. You click on a dot and you can spin it right around to the other side, and it snaps. If you hover over there, it will snap to the little 15-degree markers. So now I can put it back the right way up and get the paint bucket tool out and start painting this to look however you want. Now keep in mind, when you're painting with the bucket tool, if I press bucket now and click on it, it's going to do the whole table. So if it was a timber table using wood, that could be quite handy because it does the whole thing in one easy go. But more likely, undo, you're going to want a space bar, double click, and let's say you want to color just that one. You could, for example, make it glass or translucent. You can go with, say, a smoky grey glass and you can see through it. Or you might want to make just some parts timber. Okay, so I'll let you play with the colors, and that's the end of this tutorial. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and you can basically make it look like a nice table. By the time you are finished, it should look awesome. So All the best.